This podcast is powered by the pros at Paschal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPaschal.com.
Phil, I know the last time we spoke, we appreciate you joining us this morning. We were talking about conference realignment. It hadn't happened just yet. It is official as of today. I think a lot of our listeners know, how are Oklahoma and Texas joining the league going to impact Arkansas football moving forward?
Well, it makes it tougher for everybody in the SEC, and two powers like that. And Texas and Oklahoma coming in, both rank in my top 10 in the power poll in the magazine. So these are two very high-quality teams, and I think it makes it tougher for everybody in the SEC, including Texas and Oklahoma. They're taking a step up in competition. It's and, you know, now with the loss of the divisions, trying to forecast a 16-team league here, pick them from 1 through 16, pretty tough.
Yeah, and, you know, I would assume the job's equally as difficult probably in the Big Ten, which is expanded, and now it seems like do you consider it a power too, or how deep do you think the power goes in college football now?
Yeah, I really do think that the SEC and the Big Ten are above everyone else. I do, the Big 12 and the ACC are good quality Power 4 conferences, but clearly right now when you take a look at them, the SEC and the Big Ten are the top two conferences, and who knows where this landscape of college football is going to go. You know, do we go to a Big Two? What exactly is going to happen? I don't think anybody knows right now.
Phil, I want to ask you about the Razorbacks and the start of their season. They play UA Pine Bluff, but a lot of people in our state consider that Oklahoma State game, which is in Stillwater, maybe the real start of the season. What's your forecast, at least for Arkansas? Maybe not record-wise, but just personnel-wise, and a new quarterback, new offensive coordinator. What are you expecting from the Razorbacks this year?
Yeah, coming into last year, you looked at Arkansas, and they were coming off a couple of bowl games. They had their quarterback back in K.J. Jefferson. They had their star running back in Rocket Sanders. But neither of those two was fully healthy. K.J. didn't look like K.J. all year. Rocket Sanders only played in a handful of games, and it was actually the number 4 rusher last year. And it was a down year for Arkansas, finishing just 4-8. They also played the toughest 4-game schedule of any team in the country. All 4 games away from home: LSU, A&M, Mississippi, and Alabama. And 3 of those games right down to the wire. Lost them by either 3 or 7 points. So I thought Arkansas was a much better team than their 4-8 record would indicate. But when I look at the team this year, they're improved offensively at each position. I think Taylon Green from Boise is going to step in and do probably better the stats that KJ had last year. Jaquindon Jackson's a running back I'm very high on. He was a quarterback at Utah, switched to running back. I think he's going to have a big year. The receiving core looks improved. And, of course, Pittman can handle the offensive line and make that a good unit. Defensively, 8 starters are back. It might be the most experienced unit they've had in 3 years. The schedule's tough. Arkansas might be an underdog in 7 or 8 games, but as Pittman has proven in all his years there, this is now his 5th year, they can pull some upsets. It's a big one early on. The Auburn game on the road in Jordan-Hare, that's going to be a big one. A&M, of course, in Arlington. I think when you enter the season, Arkansas is going to be picked lower in the SEC. They're going to be an underdog in 7 or 8 games, but it wouldn't put past Sam Pittman to come out with a bowl game this year. They actually are ranked in my top units in the front of the magazine in all 8 position categories. So I think this is a dangerous Arkansas team, and one that's going to pull some upsets and probably get to a bowl game.
Phil, you mentioned the 8 starters back on defense. I know there are questions at linebacker. I think a lot of people are going to be excited to see what Brad Spence has. When you look at that unit as a whole, is that the most concerning part of the defense?
Yeah, you hit it right on the head, the linebacking core. Now, they've got some excellent additions. You take a look at a guy like Xavier Sori coming in from Georgia, who's my number 7 rated linebacker coming out of high school. The fact he got in 2 starts with that Georgia unit last year tells me that he could be pretty doggone good. You look at Stefan Dix coming in from Marshall. He was one of their top tacklers last year, originally at Florida State. Once again, one of my top linebackers coming out of high school. Slaughter at the hog position from Tennessee. Switzer coming in from Utah State, who had 85 tackles last year. So they hit the transfer portal hard. How those transfers do is going to be the key. But really, as you touched on, when I look at the defense, the one unit that I have a question mark on on is the linebacking core because they lose their top 4 linebackers from last year.
Phil, you mentioned Tennessee, where Danico Slaughter's from. They're an opponent on Arkansas' schedule. You've got big marquee home games: Tennessee, Ole Miss, Texas, and LSU as well. Arkansas struggled in home games last season. Looked good on the road, like you mentioned. What's the key to really just showing up in Fayetteville this year?
I think staying healthy, number one. I think the team would have been different last year with the 100% K.J. Jefferson with Rocket Sanders. So staying healthy is going to be the big thing. The line play, which if they can get the offensive line to continue to improve, and the defensive line as well. When I talked to Coach Pittman, he said they go 3 deep on the defensive line. The threes are young, but they're very good players, and he wouldn't be concerned at all putting in the third team. So when you can go deep on the defensive line, you're in good shape there. I think the main thing is let's get that first game against Tennessee. I've got it rated as a toss-up. If they win that one, they gain a lot of confidence. LSU's a winnable game. They're off a bye. They get LSU at home. LSU's one of the teams at the bottom of my experience chart this year. And the same thing with Ole Miss. Once again, a winnable game. A game that Arkansas showed last year. They went into the Grove and only lost by 7, a game they were a 2-touchdown underdog. So I think how they fare in those home games is going to be the key to this season. And I give them a good shot at winning all 3 of those.
Phil, I was wondering, the SEC has put out at least the part of the day the games are going to be played in. Has that changed your evaluation and maybe the home field strength, knowing a game, say, in Death Valley at Baton Rouge is going to be played at night versus an afternoon game? Is having those, quasi-game times or parts of the day change the way you forecasted any of the SEC games?
No, it did not, but there is definitely an advantage to playing at night. The fans get a little more juiced up, and it's always a much rowdier atmosphere at night. I think you probably add an extra point or 2 to the home field edge, but let's face it, in the SEC, home field edge, with the exception of Vanderbilt, is pretty tough throughout the conference.
Yeah. What are you expecting offensively from Arkansas? You went through, Taylon Green, a few of the position groups, but with Bobby Petrino orchestrating the offense, calling the plays, what are your expectations this year for Arkansas's offensive side?
I'm looking for big-time improvement. Last year they dipped. They went from 471 yards per game all the way down to 327. As explained, they had some injuries, things like that. I think Petrino steps into a really good situation here. My computer's calling for him to jump back up to 31 points per game this year, and I think they can indeed hit that. If Taylon Green stays healthy, and I like Singleton, the redshirt freshman, the backup quarterback. He's a guy that his strength is his running ability. He may not have he's not as strong an arm as Taylon Green has, but he's very accurate. So I like that depth. I like the depth at running back. When you look at Jaquindon Jackson, Dubinion, Russell, and then the receiving core, losing Luke Haas last year at the tight end spot after 5 games was big. I think he was emerging as one of the top tight ends in the country. Getting him back and pretty much all the receivers back from last year. And the key is going to be the offensive line. Now, Coach Pittman said they're much improved on the offensive line. They're a tight-knit group, and they're going to be solid. And if that's the case, I look for big-time improvement from the Arkansas offense this year.
We've mentioned the 2 new teams with Oklahoma and Texas. You talked about no divisions. We haven't talked about no Nick Saban. It's been a long time since you put out the summer book without Nick Saban being a factor as the head coach. How's that changed, or has it changed or altered your view of this league or of the Alabama program in a great way as far as how you think their success will come?
Yeah, and, talking to Coach DeBoer and going over the team with him, I said, what's it like filling the shoes of a legend? And he's a confident coach, and he's a coach that's won like 90% of the games he's been a head coach in, dating all the way back to when he was at Sioux Falls, going 67-3. And, Alabama lost a lot of players to the portal. And so my original thought process in Alabama is, boy, you lose Saban, you lose all those players to the portal, you're in trouble. But DeBoer brought in a lot of solid players, like a Parker Brailsford at the center from Washington, Bernard coming in at wide receiver. They've got Milroe back. The running backs are deep. The defensive line's solid. And I think there's actually more talent on this Alabama team than what DeBoer had last year at Washington when he made it to the national championship game. So I think a home run hire in Kalen DeBoer, if there's any coach in the country that can succeed filling those massive shoes of Nick Saban, I think Kalen DeBoer can do it. And I think Alabama's going to be a legitimate contender in the SEC, along with Texas and Georgia. Those are my top 3 teams this year.
All right, so Phil, before we let you go, you mentioned those 3 teams. Georgia has to go to Tuscaloosa, to Austin. They also has to travel to Oxford on November the 9th. How do you think Georgia is going to be able to navigate through the SEC post Nick Saban as we let you go?
You know, I do think they probably lose one game during the course of the year just because they have to play at Alabama, as you mentioned, at Texas, at Ole Miss. Clemson's not an easy opener. Playing Florida and Jacksonville is going to be tougher than most folks expect. But when I look at this Georgia roster and went through it with the coaches, this is the best roster in college football. Carson Beck back at quarterback, the offense-defense line solid. They are a very talented team. So I think they probably drop one in the regular season, but I do see them winning the SEC and winning the national championship this year. I think they've got the best roster in college football.
BetOnline is your #1 source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your phone. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts.